The gentleman is recognized.
And Mr. Chairman, I then also like to yield myself as much time as I may consume. I'm going to come up to the podium because I do have some boards to show.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. First and foremost, I want to thank the members of the Congressional Black Caucus. Putting together a budget is not an easy task. It takes a lot of work, a lot of time. So I want to thank them for doing that and for proposing what I think is a piece of legislation that really dramatically shows the differences between the two sides. Compared to the committee budget, this substitute increases taxes by $96.6 billion in fiscal year 2007 alone, and increases taxes also on the American people by $516.9 billion in the next 5 years. Now, I know that when you're dealing with numbers of this scope, it's hard for people, those of us here sometimes and people back home, to really kind of grasp what that is, put that in perspective. So I wanted to try to put what those numbers, those tax increases on the American people that this amendment proposes, what they really are like. So the tax increase proposal for fiscal year 07, again, $96.6 billion, proposed by this amendment. And I have a board here that has a picture of the state of Florida, the state that I'm honored to represent. And they just had a legislative session in the state of Florida. The tax increases in this amendment are smaller than the entire budget of the entire state of Florida. Now, keep in mind what we're talking about. The state of Florida, the fourth most populous state in the entire country, which funds from their budget schools and housing projects and every road in the state, the transportation that the state does, and environmental protection, including Everglades restoration and law enforcement and prosecutors and health care and the court system and the public defenders and the judges and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yes.
There is too much conversation on both sides of the aisle. The Speaker has a right to be heard. Would the gentleman to my left? Would you take your conversations off the floor? The gentleman may proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So if you got the entire budget of the entire state of Florida, it's smaller than the tax increases that this amendment proposes just in 1 year. Just in 1 year. I think that kind of puts it in perspective. But that's not all. Because if you look at the tax increases proposed for the 5-year program that this amendment proposes, which is a tax increase on the hard-working American people of $516.9 billion. And I have another board. That tax increase is larger than 1 year's expenditure of Argentina, the Bahamas, Belarus, Belgium, Colombia, Costa Rica, Croatia, the Czech Republic, Bulgaria, Egypt, Guatemala, Honduras, Jordan, Libya, Pakistan, Panama, Puerto Rico, Thailand, Uganda, Uzbekistan, combined. So some people say we're spending too much money in foreign aid. No. The tax increases in this amendment over 5 years are larger than what these countries spend in 1 year for all their expenditures combined. I think that puts it in perspective. But we can go further. We can go further. If let's talk about some. Let's put the entire Western Hemisphere. This amendment is asking the taxpayers of the United States in 5 years to pay in new increased taxes more than the entire expenditures of the governments of the entire Western Hemisphere combined. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Brazil, Argentina, Panama, Belize, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Haiti, Paraguay, and all the Caribbean. If you funded their expenditures for 1 year, it's still not as large as a tax increase that this amendment imposes on the American people for the next 5 years. But you know something, some people may say, well, I don't know a lot about those countries. Maybe they're just not that large. They are. But maybe they're not that large. So let me see what else. Well, what's the biggest economic superpower out there that we hear about all the time? Well, let's pick China. Communist China. We know what a huge superpower it is. We know that it's just this incredible monster of an economy. Well, let's look at what their expenditures are in 1 year, and let's compare it to the tax increases that this amendment proposes to impose on the American people in raised taxes over the next 5 years. The expenditures of China over 1 year, $424.3 billion. And yet, this tax increase on the hard-working American people over 5 years is larger than that expenditure of China. But also, throw on top of that the entire budget of the state of Florida, and you still have about $20 billion of wiggle room to play with. It's important to realize that there is a huge difference between these two bills. Under the budget, the following tax relief under this proposed amendment would obviously expire. The $1,000 child credit that obviously all families benefit from. The 10% bracket, which the entire middle class benefits from. The repeal of the estate tax, which obviously would kill small businesses by that tax increase. And again, the worst part, though, is not only does it increase taxes to an incredible degree, it also then cuts expenditures on, for example, well, there's no supplemental, for example, there's no provision for supplemental funding to combat operations in Afghanistan and Iraq, or even for natural disasters. So it increases dramatically the taxes, but doesn't fund our war effort. At the same time, it cuts defense spending by $6.6 billion in budget authority and another $4.6 billion in outlays. And again, it asks to do that in a time when men and women in uniform are in harm's way. Ladies and gentlemen, again, I want to thank the sponsors because it is a dramatic difference. But for all those reasons, I would obviously urge a no vote. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, there's a huge difference between our budget and this budget by the CBC, the prestigious members of the Democratic Caucus. They increase taxes on the American people by almost $1 trillion over 5 years while cutting defense spending in a time of war. To put it in perspective one more time, let's look at this. Look at all the countries south of Mexico and excluding Florida, all of the Caribbean, all of Central and South America. Their revenues, their expenditures over 1 year are smaller than the tax increases that this amendment proposes to impose on the hard-working American people over the next 5 years. That's the reality. The bottom line is, if you believe in massive tax increases, large enough to fund the expenditures of all the countries in Latin America, if you believe in that, you would support this amendment. If you believe that the American people are paying enough in taxes, that we've got to use it more efficiently, and that we should not cut defense spending at a time of war, I would then urge my colleagues to respectfully oppose this well-intentioned but devastating amendment to the American taxpayer and to the American economy.